Hello, I'm Fireguard on Vira. I'm just going to be going over the Ranger basics, like an overview, should you play Ranger. This is going to be a monologue slash vlog format, so if you're interested in something short and sweet, this is not the video for you. I'm going to go over basically all the different skills. I'm not going to go over like all the tech and stuff, but I will be going over just my generic experience. So to start off with, I'm just going to be going over all the different abilities that Ranger has. So K for the skill tree. Let's just start off with weapons. So right now, like, this is kind of whatever. Like, these are all wrong. You never use your two-handed sword. The only time I use it is when I'm killing caravans. So I go for, you know, the group buff abilities up here, right? Like, I don't even go for any of this stuff. This gives like 15% attack speed to everyone in my party. So, you know, 15% times like 8 people getting this benefit, it's going to outweigh, you know, trying to do more sword auto attack damage by yourself. Longbow is normally what you're going to be using. So this is what I'm running right now. Penetration, you know, crit chance. So you always want to run this because it says crit chance of all projectiles. So all of these are finisher, deadly finisher, weapon combo attacks, weapon proc effects. This is the only one that applies to, it says all projectiles. So that means it should be applying to your other skills. But I can't confirm that because it's such a small percent and the sample size is not enough and there's no combat log, so I can't confirm. And then this is like for PvP setup, so I go, you know, double wound. And then this is a staggered is basically disable evasion, and it's good for fighters. Tanks also apply it, mostly for fighters, but we don't really have any benefit of getting stagger for ourselves, so we go for wound for less healing for the enemy. And each stack of wound is 5%, and it stacks up to 10 times for 50%. Right now it's kind of bugged where it's applying like 6 stacks per auto attack or something stupid, so you basically instantly cap out. I opt for deadly finisher just because that makes the auto attacks do a little bit more damage. It's like 10% more weapon damage, which when you go from 84 to 94, that's more than a 10% DPS increase. So to me, these are basically always good to take. And then I have so much dexterity that I also go for base crit. If I was leveling, I would go for penetration chance instead. I am at war right now, so I might get got while we're here, but we'll see. At the top, I just go crushing blows. You could go for rhythmic swings, probably, but this is just more damage and increased critical damage when we already have so much crit damage. Just seems good. Heartseeker. Anytime you use an extended finisher, which is also part of the reason why I want to go these, you also apply bleeding to the target, and then you also gain increased accuracy damage and then increased critical damage, and these bonuses double against bleeding targets. So even though we don't have like the option to go bleeding and we don't use bleeding ammo on single target, we're going to be getting bleeds through this, and then we also gain, you know, a whole bunch of more damage and stuff from that for bleeding. Yeah, and we never use the two-handed sword basically. For stamina, you always want to go for the spring step first. Basically you just go up the line. Right now you have more points than you have skills, so you're just going to be taking everything. Never use block. The default key for block is E, and you do this. And all that does is it guarantees that when anything that hits you will be blocked. That looks like an interesting bug. It seems that whenever you block, all of your skills disappear. No? It was just a temporary bug? Okay, that's a weird one. Let me pause here. Okay, so that is the weapon trees. Next, let's just go over the character sheet quick since I have that open already. So you are building strength and dexterity. Strength is really good because it gives 3 power rating, 1 accuracy rating, and 1 penetration rating, which are all really good. Dexterity, so physical evasion is like a nice flavor stat, but it doesn't really do anything. And attack speed is kind of iffy. like, it's not bad, but it's worse than pretty much everything else. And then strength is, and then critical chance rating is like, it's good, but you kind of cap out at like 35%-ish. Like, you only stack so much crit chance, and unless you invest in crit power, then it's not, right? Like, crit chance isn't as good. You're basically putting, what? It says, looks like it's about 10 rating per 1% crit chance. So you're putting 10 rating to gain, so normally baseline it's like 50% power. So you're putting in 10 rating to get 1%, and then that 1% is more like 0.5% because you're only getting 50% crit power. Versus you can put in 3 power rating and you can gain 1 physical power. And if you go up, like, let's say 3 physical power, that's almost a flat 1% damage increase, and that's when I'm here at like 470%. If I was at like 200%, 200 power, going up like 3 physical power is like more than a 1% DPS increase. So it's more than twice as good to go for physical power. And when you combine that with attack speed, then yeah, strength is a lot better. And then not just power, but strength also has accuracy and penetration on top of that. So even if accuracy and penetration disappeared, strength would still be better than dexterity currently. At least in my opinion. Like, some people say that penetration is bugged right now. I haven't tested it myself. But I primarily go for gear that has strength, and then I also go for whatever has dexterity, high physical power. Right now, attack speed, like I said, is not very good. So the weapons that have the highest physical power right now are two-handed swords and longbows, and that's kind of the same case for daggers, because like daggers have a lot of attack speed and a small amount of physical power, like it's 50-50 split. And with how much stronger physical power is than attack speed right now, it's even the rogues are using two-handed swords. And yeah, so I prioritize physical power, and I get dex wherever I can get it with strength for free. I should have better shoulders than that, but it's whatever. So that's pretty much the character sheet. There's other stuff like magical and like physical defense, but we are not tanks, so we only care about the offense portion here. Next is skills. So we did stamina, we didn't know the weapon trees. Let's go over the class skill trees. I guess we'll just go from top to bottom. So scatter shot, 125%, 1.1 second cast time. And then the more dexterity you have, the faster the animation and the cast times are for your skills, by the way. So having more dexterity makes you cycle through your skills faster, but the cooldown stays the same, right? So your net DPS is only going to be more auto attacks. And I guess you can like compress your weapon DPS in a smaller window that way too, through your abilities. But okay, going over skills, scatter shot, spread of arrows. It doesn't say here, but it also applies armament, which is your whatever your ammo type is. So right now I have concussion for daze, there's barbs for bleed, and then there's weight for snares. So just to like show an example, if I use scatter shot, it just does that. It's just a little AoE cone in front of you. It used to launch you backwards. They changed that. It no longer does. Like a little hop backwards is what it used to do. Yep, so weapon combo finishers reduce this ability's cooldown by 3 seconds. So every like third auto attack or so, scatter shot's cooldown gets reduced. And I can showcase that. So multi-scatter shot gives it 2 charges. Concentrated scatter shot, you can hold it down and it goes in a line, and this line has a pretty long range. So if you look here, it follows the train when it goes uphill and it goes pretty far. So I'm just going to kill a mob using just scatter shots and auto attacks. So let's charge scatter. It applies the armament, which is the daze. The auto attacks reduce the cooldown you saw. From 5. So that's the finisher, and then that's the deadly extended finisher, is that second reduction there. So that's pretty much Scattershot. It's really good for punishing narrow clump points, and if you pick the bleed armament, it's good for applying your weapon ammo type to the target mob. Which actually, I'm surprised it applied. Did it apply daze there? I have to see. Without the armament even being equipped. No, it is not. Okay. So we'll just finish this mob off. Alright, let's continue. So that's pretty much it for Scattershot. Does pretty good damage while charged, and the cast time is fast enough that you can, you know, that's 500% weapon damage right there, pretty quick, right? That's about as fast as a snipe, so in terms of DPS, it is pretty good. Next is disengage. So basically this applies snare to enemies that are close around you, and then it also does like a little backflip forwards. This is a free skill point, and it just makes you disengage in whatever direction you're moving. It gives you one cooldown reset if a target is in melee range. This cooldown reset doesn't like reload in the background, so if a target's in close range, you disengage, you wait the 20 seconds. If another target comes to range and you disengage, it goes on cooldown. So you have to, yeah, it doesn't like keep refreshing that one cooldown until you put the skill on actual cooldown. So disengage, I'm just going to use it normally once. Ideally, you want to use it when you're high up in the air. So if you have like airstrike, oops, wrong button. If you have airstrike up in the air, and then you can disengage while you're in the air. And then you saw that where I flew backwards and then I stopped and just fell straight down. Currently, that's one of the things I really don't like about disengage, is that how it stops your momentum. And this happens when you're moving forwards too. And I'll show it again here in 5 seconds when it finishes loading. But yeah, so generally you don't take this. Maybe if it was like a more melee oriented skill, oriented meta, but right now our skills slots are pretty much full. There's some stuff that you could cut out, but yeah. So just to show, so if you have sprint on and you're disengaging forward, it'll launch you forwards towards the end. So just to do the same thing again, I don't have airstrike, so we're just gonna jump, disengage, and then you see here at the end how I get launched forward, and then I do a roll at the end, and I get a lot more distance covered. Okay. So that's disengage. Next is headshot. So it deals 200% weapon damage, plus 25% if they're below their maximum health. And then penetration is increased by 25% against dazed targets, and it's increased by another 25% against silenced targets. And then headshot deals another 50% below targets, two targets below 50% maximum health. So 200%, 225%, 270%, 207, so it's 275% plus 25% built-in pen, plus another 25% potential built-in pen, and it's also applying wounds. Headshot is basically, if the target is below 50% HP, this is the best skill to be using. It does have a little 1.3 second wind-up time, but yeah. So just gonna do scatter shots and headshots on this guy just to like showcase here. And I am going to do the silence here. Okay, and then we're going to do the pet kill shot. 2.8k crit. And it's a really quick-ish cast time. And I mean, you know, that's pretty much it, right? You just push the button and it does the skill. Headshot refunds 4 seconds of its cooldown when it hits a marked target. I mean, that's good, but like 4 seconds off of 15 seconds, I mean, it is more DPS, right? But, you know, our skill slots are kind of full. Like if I were to drop anything, I would drop airstrike and get this if you wanted to like min-max DPS, but right now with the current time to kill, it's not really worth like min-maxing to that degree. So let's pick up this stuff. Sprint, jump, disengage in the air. Okay, and anytime you do stuff, you should always be jumping. Let's just auto attack a mob to death while we're jumping here. So when you're auto attacking, you want to be jumping because you gain a lot more distance. And you know, if you're like timing your auto attacks for like when you're like shooting your arrows, you can gain a lot more distance. Alright, so let's get this. Silence, headshot, barrage, and then we'll just do scatter to finish. Okay, and then when you jump dodge roll, you also want to do that. That's also part of the reason why you want to rush this, because this 50% increased distance makes it so that like you like, I don't want to know what you want to call it, you get momentum from dodge rolling in the air. Like if I'm running forward and I dodge, I move this far. But if I jump dodge roll, I get to like fly a bit more. So it's always worth jumping pretty much all the time in this game. Even when you're channeling Snipe, you can jump up and down in place, you just can't WASD. Every other skill you can cast while moving around, except for scatter shot, I guess. Right, back to the class skills here. Let's do armaments quick, and then we'll do the new skill. So enhance armament weight. Basically, you can't use this unless you're solo, because snared shares a DR cooldown with chilled, and if you DR your target with snares, then that means that your mages can't proc chilled, and they can't proc freeze off of those chills. There's no like real synergy with snares for other skills. So if you're taking armament weight, you're kind of preventing your mages from doing optimal DPS with their skill synergies. So basically never take weight if you're in a group, because you're just going to DR the mob anyways. Even by yourself with your different routes, like playing solo, you're going to DR mobs if you're like going bear trap and vines. Yeah, so basically a dead skill, don't use it. Barbs, so targets become bleeding. This is really good for PvE DPS. So you do the charge scatter shot in a line, and every person that gets hit gets bleeding affected on them. So if you hold left shift here, so 15% weapon damage every second, lasts 6 seconds, right? So 15 times 6 is what? 30 times 3, so not 120% damage. Hold on here. 15 times 6, yeah, 90. It is 90. Okay, that's what I thought. So, and then since I already have the calculator out, so bleeding becomes hemorrhaging, so 20% for 0.5 seconds. So this is 200% weapon damage if you can get hemorrhaging. So you want to barbs, charge scatter to hit a whole bunch of enemies to give bleeding, and then you vine field to proc into hemorrhaging to do 200% weapon damage, and that makes vine field like an actually good skill to use even single target for just plain DPS. And then you can do another scatter shot to reapply the barbs, or you can do other skills to reapply the barbs. Okay, but that's pretty much barbs. It applies bleeds on skills. Concussion, so this procs dazed, finishers, extended finishers, salvo, or scatter shot. That's pretty much all of these. So left shift for dazed. Dazed is reduced magical casting speed by 25% for 8 seconds. The main benefit of Dazed is that we can consume it to proc Silenced, so they can't use skills for 4 seconds. They can still auto attack, but yeah. So right now, most people are running Concussion because it makes their headshot stronger, and it also makes whatever it's called, the Thundering Shot, kill targets. The only bleed synergy we have is with Barrage, which, you know, is pretty good, and then is with Vine Field. But we already have bleed from our weapon combo attacks here in the tree. So if you're DPSing a target long term enough where bleed actually will matter, then you're already getting it from your weapon tree. If you auto attack enough anyway. So that's armaments. Moving on, power shot. This is the new skill they added. It has a 35 meter range. Longbow attack also has 35 meters. By default, ranged weapons have, switch weapons. By default, ranged weapons have 30 meters. By the way, I do not like the new skill tooltip here. I can't tell clearly that this is a bow and that this is a sword, right? Like, this is like the very tip of like, I don't know what this thing is supposed to be. I prefer the old UI. So switching back, 35 meter range. So we have Snipe, that's 35 meters, Power Shot, that's 35 meters, and Auto Attack's at 35 meters. There's no skills in the game other than Vine Field that go beyond 30 meters. So you can safe spot enemies by sniping and then like rooting them at that 35 meter range mark, and then salvoing them, and then not salvo, power shotting them, and then just auto attacking them, right? It's free damage before anyone else can actually hit you back. Personally, I wish that the longbow didn't have 35 meter range, because it makes everyone feel like they have to use the longbow in large scale PvP, because the extra range is just so good. And it's not even like 10%, it's almost a 20% increased auto attack range, right? Because 10% of 30 is 3, times 2 is be 36, so it's almost a 20% increased auto attack range, which is ridiculous. Okay, sorry, Power Shot. Deals 200% physical damage to the target enemy, generates 25 focus, does not consume focus when dealing damage. So 200% physical damage is pretty bad. The reason why it's bad is because Thundering Shot deals 200%, and it also applies like 5 or 10 stacks of Shocked, which deal 25% lightning damage. The problem is that's ability damage, so it's not that great, but Thundering Shot will still do more. Actually, Thundering Shot is worse than Power Shot, just because I didn't realize that that's ability damage on the right side magic. I thought it was always weapon damage. Lightning Reload. Maybe when they introduce like you get elemental specializations or something, you can become like a lightning whatever, but right now it's just 200% with like barely any extra shock damage. But sorry, Charge Scatter does 250%, and it casts in 1.1 seconds, and this casts in 1.3, so it's better off using Charge Scatter shots. The increased focus generated is like nice, but the focus, sorry, I probably should have covered the passive skills first, but at this point I'll wait till the end. But the focus is 15% multiplicative additional damage based on how much focus is stored. So, you know, if you add 15% to 200% damage, that is what, 35% increased damage, and 25 focus is 1/4 of that. So if you have a focus bar of 15% and you're doing 25% of that from the 25 generated focus, then you're dealing 3.75% more damage, is basically how much focus it's recovering. So times what, 200% weapon damage, let's say, 0.0375 times 200. Yeah, so you're doing like 7.5% more weapon damage. So in reality, even though it says 200, it's more like 200 and like 10%. So that focus is like so small, that's just not worth playing around. You're better off just using another skill that does 200% more damage, rather than trying to bank on something that's doing like 7.5% more damage for your next skill in terms of like regenerated focus. Moving on, Barrage fires a continuous barrage of arrows at your target. I'm not exactly a super big fan of these tooltips because I can't tell how much weapon damage this does. It says barrage of arrows, and then it does get reduced CDR based on if they're bleeding or hemorrhaging. So we'll do this. So Power Shot's 200% physical damage, right? So we'll just use a Power Shot. 1.59 for crit. Okay, and then we'll do a barrage. 1.459. So some of those barrage arrows did crit, but it did almost as much damage as a Power Shot. We'll do another Power Shot. 852. So barrage did almost double the power of the Power Shot. So we averaged the crit and the non-crit. Barrage still did more damage than the Power Shot. So let's say that barrage is like 250%-ish damage. So it casts faster than a scatter shot, so it's better than scatter shot, it's better than Power Shot. The Thundering Arrow, the Shocked, is based off magic damage, so Barrage is better than that. Snipe does 400% weapon damage over 3 seconds, so this is like 150% weapon damage per second. and then barrage is like a second. So I would say that snipe and barrage are pretty equal in terms of like net DPS done, but snipe is better for PvP because it's burst damage. But so headshot, then snipe, then barrage, then probably charge scatters just to get it on cooldown, and then power shot and thundering shot really close. I guess I would go power shot just because of the focus. Alright, but moving on for our skills. So that's barrage. Pretty good. The biggest problem with barrage is you saw those stream of arrows. I'm going to do it one more time. All of those little hits that are ticking up on that HP bar there. Sorry, let me just finish this. Ooh, blue. But all those ticks that are happening, there is a stamina talent. That's sprinting. Stamining. So, regain 5 stamina upon successfully dodging incoming attack. So every arrow of that barrage counts as an incoming attack. So while it's happening, you can be spamming, dodge rolling back and forth, or like super far away. So if you have a group kill target, you should never use barrage on it. But most people don't know to spam dodge when barrage is happening. Otherwise you get like an invincibility window. So moving on for class skills, that is barrage. Sorry, I am working from home, so I'm alt tabbing over. So let's talk about hunts next, just because that's here in the line. So Hunt of the Tiger, 10% increased crit chance. And then whenever you use your mark, the target gains that effect instead. So I have 10% increased crit chance. I use mark on the warrior. Everyone who attacks the warrior also has 10% increased crit chance. So if I mark a target and I switch and hit another target, I'm losing 10% crit chance because I no longer have hunt active while the mark is out. And the mark lasts for 8 seconds. It has a 30-second cooldown, so it's a pretty decent uptime. It also has a 35-meter range, which is nice because you can snipe, which has a 35-meter range, and then when snipe almost hits, then you hit mark prey. So the different hunts, there is Hunt of the Tiger, Hunt of the Bear, and then Hunt of the Raven, which is the level 1 default built-in. So Hunt of the Tiger, 10% increased crit chance, so we go to physical offense. Crit chance, 47%. I turn it off, it goes to 37%. This is an additive, like non-character rating crit chance added. Hunt of the Bear is also the same thing with, actually it is not, sorry, I guess I may as well spec it. So Hunt of the Bear, so we go from, Hunt of the Bear is for penetration, so we go from 17.8 to 26%. So it's like giving the equivalent rating of 10%, but it's getting DR'd. So the higher, so if you get like 40% penetration and you put on Hunt of the Bear, you're only going to be getting like 6.5% increased penetration. Meanwhile, Hunt of the Tiger is a flat 10% crit chance no matter how much rating you have. So once you get more gear, you want to switch over to Hunt of the Tiger. And then Hunt of the Raven, since we're already talking about hunts, gives you 10% increased accuracy. From what I can tell, you want to have 15% accuracy, and the only real way to get accuracy is stacking your favorite stat, strength. There are a few things that give accuracy rating, but so the priority order is 1, get hit capped, because it's 10%. If you miss 10% of your skills, you're not only missing 10% DPS, you're missing like the 10% of a scatter shot into the hemorrhaging damage, right? You're missing the roots to keep you safe so that you don't take damage. You're missing the 10% guaranteed silence effect, right? And missing a silence in PvP is just devastating, or PvE even. So start off, go accuracy, Hunt of the Raven. Once you are hit capped, it's either like 10% or maybe it's 15% or 12%. I do not know. But once that's done, then you want to go for penetration. Once you get enough dexterity where your crit chance is like over 20% or something, or you have enough crit power, then you can make the transfer into Hunt of the Tiger endgame. So accuracy, then you go penetration once you're good on accuracy, and then you go for Tiger endgame once you have high enough stats that you can just go for more damage because you're already always hitting, and you have this 170% crit chance. Also, bards have a song that gives 9% crit chance, so you can go from like 47 up to like 55% crit chance. And you know, that starts to, yeah, add up. So that is Hunt of the Tiger. So when a mark expires, the caster receives 25% increased critical avoidance for 10 seconds. So I'm just going to mark a target without like auto attacking them back. And mark doesn't put you in combat, by the way. So you can see here, reduces their critical hit avoidance by 25%. Oh, I thought that was increased crit chance. That's weird. But it comes back to you, and you get this 25% increased critical avoidance. So whatever debuff you give them, you now get back. Okay, yeah, it does say crit avoidance. I guess I just didn't read it. I assumed that it just did whatever you did with crit chance. I mean, that almost seems bad to cast, right? Like, I don't know how much crit avoidance you have. Like, is this an additive or a multiplicative reduced crit avoidance? Yeah, I guess testing, but I'm not doing that now. Moving on, Snipe. This is the big ranger skill. So 400% physical damage and apply Shaken to the enemy. So we hold left shift. Shaken reduces physical mitigation by 15% for 6 seconds. So you're basically giving everyone in your party 15% extra penetration for physical damage on the target. It has a longer cast time, and it converts bleedings into hemorrhagings. Basically, this is just big damage at like a 35 meter range. Yep, so increased crit chance for beyond 20 meters, and then you gain 20% attack speed for 5 seconds afterwards. So I don't know. I guess we could test that right now or take a look. So 20% attack speed, we are at 102. So will it go to 122, or is it going to go to like 118? So let's just channel a Snipe here and see. So it does go to 122. And then it falls off back to 102. Okay, so that's good to know that this extra attack speed is, it's not like a rating, it's just literally 20% attack speed. That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for Snipe, right? Like, the biggest thing with Snipe is that enemies can dodge it and has a really long cast time. While you're channeling Snipe on a target, their whole screen gets like a zoomed in effect. So even if you're in a storage and there's a ranger that's like camoed behind you channeling Snipe, you can still see that the screen's going in. And the second that the screen like snaps out or like starts to snap out, that's when you can press dodge. You will have to probably find a ranger friend and just do like Snipe training. Also, you know, until you do damage, camo is not broken. So you're literally invincible, unless like you can't be targeted until you actually land the Snipe. And that's the same for Thundering Shot. Until the Thundering Shot actually hits the target from flying in the air, you're still untargetable. So you can do like a Thundering Shot and then like start channeling a Snipe, or you know, whatever, while it's in the air. I mean, that's pretty much it for Snipe, right? It just flies out and does damage. So let's just take these points out. I'm going to put them here for Bear Trap just to show for the showcase. So Bear Trap pops up a trap. Normally it has a 30-second cooldown. It doesn't say, but they last 30 seconds. So you can have 100% uptime on Bear Traps. So when they take damage, they become rooted. And then, let's see. Oh, I didn't even notice that. All snared stacks on those targets can be consumed to increase the root duration by 1 second. I didn't even notice that. I guess we can test that right now. So Vine Field applies snared for each second that they're in the field. So let's apply, oops, I changed my keybinds recently because I got extra skills, so I'm still not used to Vine Trap not being on X. So let's apply this. Snared, snared, snared. So it's got 3 stacks of snare, and then let's root. I have to kite back. Oh, looks like, so that's part of the reason why you don't want like running snare, because just the Vine Trap alone, and they're already immune to and they're already immune to it. So I'll wait the 5 seconds here, and we'll try it again. And I do have my sword out right now, so I don't auto attack, just for the testing here. So they are going to be snared DR'd by the time that route ends, so we're going to have to like bear trap sooner. So see, target 1 route, so it did consume it. It does go up to 6 seconds. Okay, that's good to know. But the problem is that by the time the snare wears off, they already break out from the immunity. So it's kind of like not good. They're already, like, they break out after those 4 seconds, even though, yeah. So I guess that's something I can put in a bug report. So that's pretty much bear trap. As you saw, the trap activates instantly anyways. So there's no point in going trap slinger, because the double damage only takes it from 50% to 100%. I can't take the skill off because it's still on cooldown, so we're just going to move on. I'm going to do lightning reload after these other two. Fine Field, as you saw, has a half-second cast, a 40-meter range, and it's an AoE route. And then just for you guys know, like, CC effects and like effects in this game are standardized, so it's not like that. If you get rooted, it's always going to be a 4-second root. If you get stunned, it's always going to be a 3-second stun. There are modifiers that can increase it on like a per character or a per class basis, but in general, it's whatever the skill says is what it's going to do. There are like foods that can like increase bleeding damage, for example, but in general, you should expect, you know, hemorrhaging to always do 200% weapon damage of whoever casted it, and it has the little sword icon for physical there. And the lightning for ability damage. So Vine Trap, oops, like I said, I just changed the keybind, so it's going to take a while. Has this big AoE, it has a really long range, and just you can see it here. I'm just going to cast it, half-second cast, it just instantly pops up. There's no warning for them. It can miss by people dodging over it if they like dodge as you're casting the skill and they have you targeted. But each second that they stand in it, they also gain a stack of snared. So if mages go in, as you saw, before the 4 seconds wear out, they can get their chill and like their root off before they hit that DR, which you saw a second later from when we were doing bear trap. And I mean, that's pretty much it, right? You use it in PvP, like this is, in mass PvP, this is the best skill that rangers have, because you're basically kind of like, even if all your gear is poop, you still want to bring in a couple of rangers just to be root bot in terms of PvP. In PvE, that hemorrhaging proc is 200% plus the 125% from Vine Field. So, you know, scatter shot, applies bleeds, you root them all, turn into hemorrhages, and then you scatter shot again to reapply the bleed to all the targets. So it's pretty good. And then the ensnaring Vine Field, like even after the root ends, they are slowed by like 75% or something for like 4 or 5 seconds afterwards. So it's really devastating and basically forces bards to use nimbles to break roots out. Thundering Shot. So this is like a really slow flying projectile. The main benefit of this is that it silences targets. And then there's also the option to like make it AoE. So it's like another AoE skill option. So we're gonna proc Daze and into a silence. So we're just gonna scatter charge here. So proc Daze, we're gonna use Thundering Shot, and now there's silence. So that skill he tried to use, he can't. All he can do now is auto attack. And then as you saw, there were the shock stacks that were getting consumed up here, the small numbers. We'll do it on one more target. I'll use the lightning reload just as a showcase. So allows you to fire one ability for free, ignoring its cooldown other costs. So ideally, you don't want to lightning reload and then use your skill. You want to use your skill first, and then you want to lightning reload, and then cast it again. And as you see here, it's got the shock stacks. So the 2s are in the 8s. So the 8 is from the thorns, the 2 is from the additive weapon damage, and the 16 is from that shock damage. So shocked is like basically not doing hardly any damage. You should just view this as like a 200% weapon damage silencer. And it's better to use this than just doing auto attacks, as long as you have the mana to sustain it, which you should from a future talent, which I'll show in a case. But in general, you want to use lightning reload for snipe, or you want to use it for barrage or headshot. That's pretty much it. Well, I guess, or raining death. Raining death is the AoE skill, so if you're doing big AoE, like you're in a Zerg versus Zerg fight, you should always raining death, lightning reload, raining death, because it does the most AoE damage. Otherwise, if you're doing single target DPS, generally you want to use it for barrage. If you're doing a single target like PvP DPS and you don't want them to spam dodge barrage, you can snipe and then lightning reload snipe. So usually you snipe, the target is like, whoa, I got sniped, I don't know what's going on. So they like jump around for a bit, they're looking for you. Normally they look for the line of arrows because you're shooting stuff, but if you snipe, lightning reload snipe, they're like, whoa, I got shot, where did it come from? Like they might see the smoke trail for the first arrow, but nobody expects the second snipe, I guess I'll say. And dealing 800% weapon damage in 6 seconds is enough to kill most people. Yep, and this is only for like offensive skills, right? So you can't lightning reload vines or bear traps, etc. That is this section of tree, so we're moving on up. Can finally take that bear trap off. So moving on up, party stride applies to all members within a group. So this lasts, it doesn't say here, but this lasts 15 minutes. So if I use party stride, so I'm moving, let me bring up my character sheet, base stats, movement speed, 100%. So if I use party stride, base movement speed goes up to 110%. I now run faster. When I sprint faster, when I jump, when I disengage, I launch faster. 10% movement speed. If you play World of Warcraft and you see the Windwalker Monk aura, that's basically this, except it's a 15-minute buff. This is only all group members. Group members are people who are within your party. So if you're in a raid, you want 1 ranger per party to buff for 15 minutes. Otherwise, and then you can move them around after that. But in general, you want that. So party stride and strider are basically the same skill. It's just that this applies to everyone within your group. And you can, so when I use party strider, it does not affect my mount, like my mount doesn't get it, but if I use strider by targeting it, it does. When you use party strider, everyone's mount in your group also gains the 10% increased move speed. So I don't know why party strider doesn't apply to your own mount, because your mount is in a group with you, but it doesn't. So keep in mind that you can just like random people who are running by, you can click on them and you can cast strider on them directly. And these don't stack, so it's not like I can party strider myself and then also strider myself. I mean, that's pretty much it. I guess party stride also affects caravans, so this is very good, like if you like speeding up people's caravans in groups, or if you just have like an ult that runs caravans, it's good for that. We already did armament. This is the dazed one. Call of the Wild. So this is one of the best CC breaks in the game. So remove all snared and chilled status effects from the caster, and increase move speed by 20%, and become immune to all of those for 8 seconds. And then this breaks all disabling effects. So when you're in PvP and you're fighting, so you break out of a hard CC, you might get hard CC'd again, but you can't be rooted, or actually become immune to all movement impairing effects. Yeah, so you can't be rooted, you can't be snared, you can't be chilled, you can't be frozen. So you break out of a CC effect, and then those immunities let you just walk out. So they can't like reapply the snaring from like vine fields, for example. So, and it lasts for 8 seconds, which is pretty good for a 30-second cooldown. So Rangers have a really good, reliable CC break. Ranger is like the shot caller class currently, by the way, because you're so far back with your ranged abilities. You are setting up the clumps with vine traps for engages, and then you're just spamming like generic AoEs or like generic single target DPS on mobs, on targets too. Yep. I just used Raining Death, so it's on cooldown, so I'm going to move to the next skill and then I'll come back to it. Airstrike, so leap in a line, and then targets hit that are snared become rooted. I don't know why it consumes the snare attacks. That doesn't make sense to me, but it does. So it ticks 3 times. So 150 times 3, right? That's 450% damage. If you hit the same target with all 3 airstrikes, it does more damage than a snipe. The problem is that I'm just going to do it here. So the problem is that those circles are really small and they're spread out, and you can steer yourself in a circle, but the animation follows like where your character's like. So like you see how I like running to the right or left, like my character's like leaning to the left or right as I jump in the air. When you're doing airstrike, it does the same thing. So as you spin a circle, your character like leans towards the outside, so you end up shooting like a round circle. So it's pretty much impossible to hit the same target with all three of those. This leaves airstrike to basically being a parkour only skill, or like, oh my gosh, there's someone on me, I have to get out. But the problem is that like even if someone's directly on you and you have to get out, you saw how slow the animation is, right? And then when you land, you're doing like a slide thing. So you're basically seeing yourself for a long time. So I'm just gonna like weave back and forth here just to showcase. So like they're way spread out, even though I landed in pretty much the same spot that I started in, just because the character's like leaning left and right. So you can't really use it for damage. You can snare like one person that you go over, but that's only if they already have snare stacks. Yeah, so in general, this is a bad skill, but it is faster than walking, right? So, you know, you can use it for that, and you can use it to like climb up on rocks and stuff if you want to be cool, and like disengage is on cooldown. So that's pretty much the only use for airstrike. Raining Death, this is the Ranger AoE clump punish skill. 2 consecutive volleys dealing 100% weapon damage each, right? So that doesn't seem like very much, and it's not. So it's 200% in an AoE, but it is a 30 meter range AoE. Meanwhile, Scattershot is only a 20 meter range AoE unless you charge it, but that charge is a very small cone. It applies a stack of wound for each target hit. So if you hit, so it fires twice, right? So it's 2 stacks of wounds. So if you shoot this, 1, 2, lightning reload, you shoot again, 3, 4, you're at 4 stacks of wounds, and that's 20% reduced enemy healing received. If there are 2 rangers who Raining Death reload Raining Death, that is 40% reduced healing received for the entire raid in the giant cone. So I'm just going to cast it here. So like ignore the animation, it is like everything within this range, even though it only shows a couple of arrows landing. At first I thought, I was like, wow, this skill is poop because it doesn't hit anything close to you, but it's just the area effect of the animation is unclear. I was out of range for that one, so I'm just going to lightning reload and hit the target with it just so you can see what the damage numbers look like. So 1.4k damage, so that's almost as much as, that's as much damage as a power shot. But it's as much damage as a power shot in a giant AoE while also giving 2 stacks of wounds. And mages will apply shocked, so maybe it does 20% more damage. It's kind of whatever though. That don't bother playing around or even thinking about that shocked effect. And then I guess this, and then I'll go over the passive skills. Safety and regeneration. Each time regeneration effect deals each time the target of your regeneration effect deals damage. Oh, okay. So the regeneration is this. So let me hover my mouse over that. Deals damage to your marked target. They gain the health and mana regeneration equal to 5% of the damage dealt. So this is like your mana sustain. So just to like waste some mana here. Okay, and then if we're gonna mark and then snipe the target here. Mark, snipe. So that mark is way too soon. It just wasted like 4 seconds sitting on there. So my mana regeneration like spiked up really quick. So these mobs have almost 10k HP, and I killed it in like 1 second. So there's no buff indicating the HP or the mana regen happening, but when you do so much DPS, you get so much mana back. One of the problems though is that mana costs are kind of fixed. Like I don't understand how the mana works in this game, like if it scales off of a percentage of whatever your maximum mana is, but there's no options to increase max mana either. But short version, as long as you have this and you use mark on cooldown, you're never going to run out of mana. I don't know how it is during leveling because you're going to do so much less damage, but the mana costs are still going to be big. So we'll see how that turns out. Alright, passive skills. Focus. Ranger abilities deal 15% additional damage proportion to how much focus is stored. And it consumes focus based on how much damage was dealt. So if you do a snipe, it consumes like most of your bar. But if you do like a barrage, it does a whole bunch of like little ticks and it doesn't end up consuming that much focus. So you passively regenerate 3 focus per second, and then weapon combo finishers restore 10 focus on hit. So right now, with how the game is, these abilities do a lot more damage than your auto attacks. So doing a skill that does 200% more damage is a lot more valuable than 15% on like 4 other skills. So basically you kind of just ignore focus and you press your buttons. All right, so like 200%, 200%, 200%, or I could do like 225%, 225%, and then I would have to like recharge the focus, right? So you're better off just pressing your buttons, ignoring the class mechanic. If there was like a big ability to juice up with focus, maybe that would be an option. Or if there was, but you don't, yeah, I don't know how they want to address that or fix it or change it or whatever. But right now, with the new implementation of focus, you basically just ignore focus and press buttons. And you always wanted to get your combo attack finishers off anyways for your weapon skill tree. So it's not like the gameplay changes at all. If you pretend this green bar doesn't exist, nothing changes in the game. Like maybe you lose out on like 3 to 5% DPS at most, which is, you know, when you saw I did 10k damage in 4 seconds, it doesn't matter. When players only have a 4.5k HP pool. Yeah, so that is focus. Salvo regenerates focus and doesn't consume it, and then everything else consumes focus. I mean, that's the only interaction, and that's pretty much all I have to say on it. Yeah, I think I did the focus math earlier, where that 25% of 15 damage, if you're doing 200% weapon damage, you're only gaining like 7.5% weapon damage for using salvo. So instead of it being like 200% physical damage, it's like maybe 230% at most, because it doesn't consume focus. So it's just not worth playing around focus in any fashion. Moving on, salvo. Fire all stored charges in rapid succession, dealing 50% physical damage per hit. So the issue is that it's a 0.4 second cast, but it feels like it's a 0.4 second cast per charge. So you're spending like, what? Let's do the math again. And I think that the UI rounds, so it's like what, 0.4 seconds, and there's 6 charges. So you're spending almost a full snipe channel just doing salvo hits, but 50% weapon damage, right? You'd think that's 300% weapon damage, but I don't know if there's something wrong or what. But let's just do like a charge scatter, for example, right? So 1269, and then let's do a salvo, 1702. So it is better than like a charge scatter, but you can do 2 charge scatters faster than you can do a salvo. So, and also, even though so the yellow numbers are crits, but even though, oh boy, I hate scrolling through the chat log here, but yeah, like the salvo, 50% weapon damage is 241 damage, 242, 271, 271, range salvo, so crit, it went up to 407. So what, 200 and, let's say it doesn't crit, so 241, let's go back to the calculator. So at 241 times 6, so 14,446 versus, let's do the double charged again. Nope, just out of range. No? Sometimes mobs are weird like this, where they just don't take damage from the terrain or whatever. So 1550. And then barrage does like the same damage, but it does it much faster. So like, even though salvo does like good damage, it has such a long cast time that you're better off prioritizing the faster casting skills in terms of like killing things quicker. like I guess another way to phrase it is the DPS per second is higher using these technically worse skills because salvo takes so long to get off. There, that's a good way to phrase it. All right, moving on. Oops. Let's move this back up. So that's salvo. Mark prey. I pretty much already demonstrated this. You just press your hunt button, and then whatever the thingy says is what it's going to do, and then that applies to everyone. And it's not just people in your party, it's everyone in the raid, I believe, because it's a debuff on the target. So hunters and raids are, I guess, considered good because it makes everyone do the extra bump in damage like another multiplier. Hunter the Raven we already talked about. Camouflage. So camouflage has, it's weird. So it has an instant cooldown. So I use camo and it's ready already. But if I sprint, okay, so sometimes sprint does break camo. Looks like it's staying on for now. If I guard, I didn't do damage, but it breaks camo. And it says that it has a 160-second cooldown. But it doesn't actually have that cooldown. So it's like there's like 2 charges of camo or something going on. I'm not sure. And then how you look to other people varies based on how far away you are. And you can't dodge while you're doing this, but you can drive caravans, you can ride your mount, you can do gathering while being untargeted, so people won't see your nameplate here until they actually hit you with an AoE skill. But you can do gathering, you can ride your caravan, you can ride around as an invisible person on your mount. So this is what other people see, right? Like they just see a random mount walking around and they can't target you. So they can hit you with an AoE to break it so that they can target you with skills. Usually people will like target your mount and incapacitate the mount though, right? If they want to hit you. And you can like dismount, mount, etc. So that's camo. And then this does make you actually untargetable. So mobs can't hit you back. I mean, you can still body pull, but as you can see, like the aggro radius when you're camoed is like greatly reduced. Like I can get like ridiculously close to mobs before they actually start pulling. I'm just gonna body pull this one just so you can see how close I get. Yeah, we're like literally like less than 3 meters from hitting this target. We're in auto attack range already from melee. No? Is it not gonna, is it gonna pull? There we go. So if you literally touch the mob, then they'll pull. Oh, I guess, yeah, I'm not sure, but when I was testing it with goblins, they did hit me back. But you basically, this is really good for like sneaking into dungeons and like PvPing other people that way. So that's camo. It's pretty good. And you can cost it while in combat, but if your bleed does tick damage, it's going to kick you out. And then since I used both charges, I have to wait for it to refresh once, and then I'll get both charges back. I don't really understand the whole cooldown second system. Thorns, so 1/3 of a ranger's level at 25, that's 8 damage. So it rounds down. So what, 25 divided by 3 is 8.3, so it does 8 damage per hit, and also procs bleed. Keep in mind that effects like bleed and hemorrhage can crit, and they'll do crit damage over time, and it'll snapshot. In general, dots over time in this game snapshot whatever buffs or effects you have going on. So you can like have thorns up and then it'll proc bleed. You can also cast thorns on other targets. So you can put it on your mount, you can put it on your caravan, but it's basically not recommended to put on your caravan because I mean, thorns will prevent like a single ranger from stealing your caravan temporarily. They just have to stop and eat rations maybe, but they might just regenerate health anyway, right? Like a mage might just use their shield and like it won't matter anyway, but it is an option. And you can also cast regeneration on another target too, on any ally, but you can only have it on one person at a time, right? So it disappears from there. So that's thorns. In general, you just want to put this on a tank in PvE. This is also another way to get bleeding. So if you put it on a tank and they pull stuff, you will see like little 8s and like little bleed procs pop up in the distance from them. Strider, we already talked about, that's just move speed. Regeneration, so that's 10 regeneration rating per level on a ranger. So 250% regeneration rating. It's more like 25 HP per second ish. You can only have 1 regeneration or 1 thorns per target. And then the main benefit of regeneration is that you have to use it on yourself, and then you use siphoning regeneration on yourself. Maybe you could use it on a mage, and you can tell the mage, like, hey, I'm marking the target, go ahead and do big DPS. But in general, you synergize best with your own marks because you use mark when you're going to do the most damage. So in general, you just always keep siphoning regeneration on yourself. Or you keep regeneration on yourself. So that is all of the skills. Let's move on. Right, all the skills. Yep, that is all the skills. Increase accuracy. Oh, I guess something else I should say. So for the weapon tree, so you see how I have crit damage? If you press H, that reflects here that I have the crit damage for crit power. If I switch weapons to my greatsword, let me switch to the greatsword. I'm going to switch this just to penetration, for example. While leveling, you want to do penetration. Once you finally get enough dex, then you switch to crit damage. Penetration, so the crit, where is it? The crit damage goes down, my penetration goes up. If I swap back, right, like, so, oh, base penetration, they changed this. This used to be 5%, so it's 2.5%. I wonder why they do that, but 2.5 times 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That should be 10% penetration. That is not going up by 10%. So it is getting affected by like stats rating. So I guess that makes penetration a bit worse than I thought it was, but it's probably still better because when you're starting off, you're only at like 10, maybe 15% crit chance. When you go up 20% crit power with 10% crit chance, that crit power is not worth it compared to the penetration. So just do that instead. But it is nice to know that I guess they did nerf penetration on here. The crit avoidance, like, nobody takes that. Disable duration. So this is an option for like clerics, because clerics can apply a silence. If they take all disable duration stuff, they can silence people for like 7 seconds or something ridiculous. Or they have like extra long stuns. So this is an option, but right now we're not down bad so much that we become root bots, that we could get a 20% increased duration on root if we wanted to do that in snares, but we are not at that point yet, in my opinion. So that is the class, that is the weapon, that is the skills. That's what all the buttons do, and you've seen the single target DPS rotation, so I guess I'll just briefly go over it. So in general, you want to open up with a snipe, and then right before the snipe hits, you want to cast mark. So you want to see that mark the target right before you see shaken. That's a good time. And then you want to use barrage, and then after barrage is done, in my opinion, you should channel double scatter shots in terms of like DPS per second. Once that's done, it's honestly, it's probably better to do power shot before you do salvo, just because the power shot casts so much quicker, right? Like this is like a 3 second or like a 2.5 second versus a 1.3 second. So your DPS is like literally twice as high with power shot compared to salvo. So power shot and then thundering shot, because 200% in 1.1 seconds is going to be more DPS than salvo is. I guess another way you could think about it is that you want to use salvo early so that you can start regenerating charges while you're doing other stuff. But the inverse is also true. You're regenerating thundering shot while you're doing salvo, right? And thundering shot does more DPS, so it's more valuable than salvo. So you can think of it that way, I guess. Yep. So let's talk about the actual gameplay experience while playing Ranger. So what's it like playing Ranger? In general, Ranger is considered the lowest DPS / worst class in term for leveling. Your single target range DPS is good, which makes you better than fighters when you're soloing 1 through 12. After level 12, fighters get an ability called Blood Infusion, so they can basically sustain themselves. So solo play, Ranger is it's better than tank. It's better than fighter 1 through 12, but then fighter pulls ahead. Otherwise, every other class is better solo than Ranger for leveling. But Ranger has the option of kiting mobs because your full DPS rotation is ranged, which is part of the reason why tank solo sucks so much, at least in my opinion. So yeah, and then you also get like the leaf regeneration like fairly early on, and it feels like it's basically useless, but it actually is kind of nice after playing like tank, because that passive regeneration does end up being like a health bar or two over like a half hour of farming, for example, solo, so you have to use less rations. I haven't tried playing a low level ranger since they added like the salvo and the mark prey super early on, so maybe it's a lot better now in the early game, but I guess I'll have to see during phase 3. So early game's kind of iffy. In a group setting, Ranger is considered the worst DPS, because when you're in a group setting, you want to pull multiple mobs at once all the time, and for AoE damage, we have a channeled scatter shot, which also bugs out and does the AoE even though it's supposed to do a line sometimes, or it consumes both charges sometimes, and then we have Raining Death. And Raining Death isn't available until way later. And the Raining Death, it's only 200% physical damage on a 45-second cooldown. So it's worse than a scatter shot in terms of damage. And it has, even though it has a bigger cone, so your AoE DPS basically caps out at level 1, or I should say level 2, maybe level 3 if you want to count this. And then you get like a bit more AoE DPS with Vine. You also have Thundering Shot, but it's only 200% damage, and it's in like a pretty small circle. So you have 3 buttons on a 20 second, a 30 second, and then like a charge-based system cooldown for AoE DPS. Meanwhile, fighters get Berserk, which is a 30% 30% damage multiplier. They get increased attack speed from their Frenzy stance. They're applying bleeds with every single AoE auto attack because they're in melee range all the time. Yeah, in general, ideally, you actually do want to be in melee range when you're leveling with a group, because the AoE auto attacks are going to do more DPS than the single target auto attacks. So you basically just become a melee range bow person if you want to be perfectly optimal. But yeah, in general, most groups know this, so they will prioritize fighters and mages over rangers. Groups that prioritize rangers over fighters are basically groups that have fighters that stand in all the AoEs, because all of the NPC mobs do AoE effects around them basically and punish melee. There's no such thing as like range punishment currently. Even stuff like the beetles, which are supposed to reward melee, are punishing melee instead and like just don't work or whatever. Yeah, so that's the leveling phase. Ranger's kind of weak, but you know, like every class, all you have to do is kill things and eventually you'll be 25, so it might just take you longer. It might be a little bit worse finding a group. Other DPS are going to be doing more than you, and once you hit endgame, around like, let's say 250% power, that's kind of the break even point, maybe even 300% physical power, where it's like, okay, the ranger is doing like as much damage as the mage, but the mages are always going to be doing more AoE damage in like PvE encounters. So even late game, when you're doing glint farming, groups are going to prioritize filling with mages and fighters before they fill with rangers. But ranger does have the better single target DPS, I'll say around like 400 physical power compared to mages and fighters. Maybe fighters are equal with rangers like late game. Very late game, like 400 to 500 physical power, rangers are basically really good for PvP because we have such a wide effect for applying double wounds and 200% physical damage. And then we also have the Vine Field, which is really strong in PvP. And then we also have 35 meter range skills with the bow attack, and the Snipe just does like crazy single target burst damage. And we can like not burst people down, but we can like apply a lot of pressure to a single target while also silencing them from super far away. yeah, so like late game, Ranger's pretty good for PvP. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So enough talking. Let's go over some clips. I do not have clips of the... Oops, not this one. I do not have clips of the new... oh, where did it go? I do not have clips of using the new skills. I just have clips of the old stuff, but stuff is basically unchanged. Oh, also, let me get this here. So this is a video I just made for InGuild on using short bow. So before, short bow has a skill called Arrow Storm, and it used to proc off of extra stuff a whole bunch, as you'll see here. And this isn't optimal. I'm just kind of showcasing how Arrow Storm does. So you do the 3 auto attacks, and then once that 3rd attack hits, you get Arrow Storm, and then once you get the Arrow Storm, then you can use Mark. Ideally, you want to use Mark of the Raven, but they just changed it, so there's no Mark of the Raven anymore. And I'm using Bear in this clip. So as you can see, Arrow Storm is doing more damage than Barrage is. So you Barrage, Lightning Reload Barrage again for 3,000 damage on top of your 2,800 damage. And then you do double uncharged scatters for another like 2,000-ish damage. So that's why they just fixed this, so this doesn't work anymore. But I figured I would show it to you guys just so you know that there used to be an Arrow Storm glitch. So if you hear people talking about how short bow is so good in small scale, that bug is probably fixed now. And that short scale, like the uncharged scatter, that only applies to whoever you're targeting. So it's not like doing AoE DPS. So even before, longbow was still meta, but I just wanted to showcase that like this is what short bow does, is it gets all these Arrow Storm procs. So you saw how it's right here. So you saw how the Arrow Storm was doing more damage than Barrage. Right now, Arrow Storm is doing about half the damage of Barrage. It also isn't proccing a whole bunch on scatter shots either. So Arrow Storm is more than like 75% nerfed, I'll say, compared to before. So that's short bow. Short bow also only has a 30 meter range compared to longbow's 35 meter range. And then since we're talking about short bow, I'll just switch to it. So short bow only has bleed and snares. So you're already getting bleed from armaments when you're doing AoE. And you can't use snare because you're going to DR on snare if you do. So you're basically stuck with one skill, and bleed is much worse than wounds for PvP. And I just went with mana because we used to have a 60-second Mark Prey cooldown. This could be switched to Keen Edge now. Also, in some world, there is a world where people go inner fire for PvP instead and like out sustain their enemy, but we are not in that world yet. If it was a very slow TTK, I could see inner fire being meta, and then you would also go like ward for like increased shielding on your HP or something. But yep, that's short bow. So clips. That's how I saw that. I was just looking at my clips here. This is a good one I like to show. Fighting purple. I'll just let it play and I'll just comment over it. So in general, as a ranger, you're kind of in like the middle-ish front line for your group. You want the lightning volatile on yourself, because when you do your 3rd combo attack, it'll proc this on like 3 or 4 different targets, and that volatile increases the magic damage that they take. So in general, all the mages in your group should be buffing rangers with these offensive buffs for their auto attacks, because you have the longest auto attack range. You also have the really good CC break, so you're kind of like the middle frontish line in terms of poking people out in a fight. And then here, like large scale, you want to be vines trapping. Ideally, when I was in the air there, I should have been light. So here I'm trying to like punish that clump that happened, but they're not really clumped, so I shouldn't have done that. Instead, I should have done raining death there, which you saw I did try to press, but I immediately had to dodge because I just took almost 3,000 damage in a second there. So I interrupt my own raining death to like double roll out. I get my heals up, and then I immediately pressing. I'm waiting here to see where we're situating. Fight's broken, and basically things are reset. They're stepping forward a whole bunch, so I get raining death on a couple of them, but that was basically a waste. I should have waited for that root there. So that juicy root happens, our people step forward. I'm still just auto attacking, doing generic AoE DPS. Ideally, I should not have wasted these two. I should be saving these for roots or like pressure clumps and not just like throwing out damage skills. But I'm not in a 30-meter range to be casting those. So they get a root, they punish our clump there. I counter root them as they're pushing in, and then we do, you know, the charge scatters to like punish their clump, the raining death for like the mass AoE damage, etc. You know, and I am getting chunked a little bit. I use my freedom to break out of the root to chase forward. We just killed a fair number of them, so I'm stepping forward thinking we're pushing through, but everyone's still recuperating back here, so I toggle on my sprint, turn around, and sprint back, for example. People are getting reses off. Okay, people are realizing, okay, we're winning the res, and like, oh shoot, we just lost a lot of people, let's run, and then you get the idea, we just run them down. So like an open field fight here, so you're kind of just auto-attacking. Right here, we should not be this close, like we're pushing into them is why we're getting this close, but ideally you step up, do the rains, do the uncharged scatters. I'm too far back for those, but I don't know if these are our roots or not. But once I realized where they were, I was like, oh wait, they probably are, so I just walked through it. There is no marker for which roots or which of these circles are ally versus enemy. That is something that they're going to have to fix long term, but right now it's basically a non-issue. In terms of like which chains or like which vines or which magma fields are ours versus the enemies. So like for example, I just walked into that route because I wanted to step in to get some shield and healing from our party, but that's enough of that clip. Let's look at some other clips. Let's see. So in like an AoE punish group, by the way, charge scatter goes through walls. So in a group punish, like charge scatter, you can do a lot of AoE DPS for punishing clumps like this. And that's like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's like 7,000 damage, like 10,000 damage in like 2 seconds. And then when you see these big raids, you want to raining death, reload, raining death. And that just does like 2,000 damage to the whole raid. A lot of that does get absorbed with shields, but those wound stacks are gonna like, you know, their HP isn't really going up because, I mean, one, we're overwhelming them, but they have so much wound on them. Here, I do go in too early, but I get, like, you know, pretty good damage off, and I instantly have to roll out because I'm in the front of the group, so people swap target to me. They vines on us, but I still have the freedom up, so I just walk out through it. Here I see that they're kind of distracted with, like, the roots and, like, halfway being chunked, so I step forwards to do, like, huge raining deaths on their entire raid. So that's 20% reduced damage reduced healing that they're getting. And that that rain of arrows or whatever, I forget, airstrike that I did there at the end was pretty pointless. I shouldn't have done that. But you see all those misses were from the vines rolls as I'm rolling out, and also from Nimble. I don't know what this is. Oh, yeah, this is the same thing. Yeah, and this is like the extended version of the fight where we turn around and we chase off some people who are flanking us from behind. I guess we can look at this. So this is more of like an earlier in the game, like I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. I think I'm even using a short bow in this, and I'm like not doing the things optimally. But in general, for like the medium smaller scale PvP, you're looking to get snipes off so that you can like instantly finish people off. I should not have used barrage. I should have charged scattered instead, because he's missing all these and getting free dodges out. He would have died there if I didn't. But in like medium small scale, people will like soft push in and like soft push back, and like, you know, people get low, they'll pull back a bit. We will front to back target whoever is like in range of people. Yeah, and if you use barrage, they get free dodges, so they just get out for free. So you should like, I don't know why, but I just didn't get that in my brain at this time. But yeah, I am using short bow. So you don't want to clump, because right now the meta is dive. So if like 2 mages jump in and like AoE burst, they can 100 to 0 like whole clumps of people. And as you saw, we lost a couple of people there. But if they had more people in the raid following up, or if we didn't have shields from our clerics using the AoE heals, we would have like lost a lot of people there and potentially wiped. But I'm getting low FPS here just because this was a new area. Let's see. So that's pretty much the gameplay. Is like you're mostly in range, but whenever it's AoE time, you do have to step up. If you're being focused, you have to rotate back, etc. And that's just kind of how PvP is for Ranger. If you look at PvP from, I'm just going to pull up a random video here just for something to watch while I'm talking. Let's see. Here. Let's do this one. These are just like random scrims that we were doing. So like if you're playing a bard, your job is to like nimble. You're kind of just a healer bot. In small scale, bards are like focusing people down. So the gameplay of a bard is kind of you're supporting your team by making everyone else, and that's what barrage looks like on a tank. Even if they don't dodge, it's a lot of DPS. Right now they're pumping so much healing into him that other people in their group are dying. But Bard is like, you have to basically play as an 8-man and stay as an 8-man together. In Zerg versus Zerg, people get really spread out, so you don't really get as much value as a Bard. But that's kind of Bard's gameplay-ish, but it's, I don't know, I like Bard. It has a lot of options. The self-healing makes it pretty good for solo play, and they also have like the laser gun to like burst people down really quick. Clerics are like kind of in the middle of your pack, and they have a lot of, they're basically all their skills are healing, but they do have some like stuns and like the chains that they can drop down. And then right now the clerics are kind of just looking to drop the AoE circle to cleanse, sorry, 1 second here. Not to cleanse, sorry, but they apply like the 25% reduced magical damage taken thingy whenever they drop their circle on the ground. Just skipping ahead. I guess this is an uncut video here. Skipping ahead. Yeah. Honestly, I think I'm going too far. I'm not even talking about Ranger anymore. So I think I'm going to stop this video here. It's way too long as is. So I'm probably not going to be editing this down. But if you're listening to like just a VOD for fun, then I guess enjoy the hour-long video of me talking. And this is old Ranger with Mark of the Raven and stuff. So, yeah, I guess let me know if you have any questions on Ranger. Just to do like a TLDR summary. Right now, you basically ignore focus as a mechanic, and you just press buttons in terms of single target value. You do have the option to silence people, and the vines are very good, but you're still kind of railroaded-ish into a fairly linear playstyle. You do have more options than like fighters in terms of gameplay, because fighters, right, like all their buttons just do damage, single target, do damage to AoE. Rangers have like roots, you have spacing, you can like try to focus wounds, or you can try to focus like silences on people instead with just auto attacking for wounds instead of like pressing buttons for skills. But otherwise it's kind of just a DPS priority order at this point, which is, you know, okay. Yeah, overall, do I like Ranger? I do like Ranger. I don't like that, I mean, I was going to say that I don't like that it can't sustain itself, but with a 30-second cooldown instead of 1 minute, I basically can like solo forever and never run out of HP or mana. But my biggest worry is the early to mid game of Ranger, of leveling and gearing, because people don't want Rangers, and you just don't do that much DPS compared to other classes. Hopefully these extra single target buttons will give us enough stuff to push that it doesn't feel like you're stuck auto attacking all the time. And I do like the auto attack system of this game. It's just, there's a weird line where there's no base damage on skills. Everything is a % of physical damage. So I don't know. It's not like you press this and you're doing 15% more DPS. It's like you press this and you're doing 4 times more DPS than auto attacking. So it's just always like super good to be pressing buttons and compared to just auto attacking. But that's enough of this. All right, goodbye then.